Ghost of a girl with a rope on her neck. When Marco first saw the girl by his bed, he thought it was a dream. Worn after 3 daily shifts in a row, he fell asleep without even undressing. The apartment was quiet, only the old batteries cracked from the sudden change in temperature. The November night was pressed by the cold to the glass, and the light of the lantern was reflected on the ceiling with yellow spots. Marco woke up from the fact that he felt as if someone was standing next to him. He felt it not with his eyes but with his skin. The chill ran down his back, as if something had touched his shoulder. He opened his eyes, and for a moment his heart froze. There was a girl standing next to the bed. Bare feet. White dress. Long black hair that fell on the chest. And the rope around the neck, rough, rubbed, with a tight knot. She didn't move. Just stood there, tilting her head to the side, and staring at him with empty eyes. Marco twitched, jumped up, but couldn't move his hands. As if the body did not obey. A short wheeze escaped from his chest. The girl raised her hand and slowly, very slowly, waved her fingers towards the door. Go. Marco exhaled and closed his eyes. When I blinked for the second time, she was gone. He sat for another minute, pressing his palms to his face, trying to calm down. Hallucinations. Lack of sleep. You need to rest for a long time, so you have. That's what he told himself. And fell asleep again. The next morning, Marco tried to act as if nothing had happened. He even laughed at work when his colleague Yurko joked about the bags under his eyes. But when I got home, something was different. There was a damp smell in the room. Not sharp, but as if someone had been wet in the apartment for a long time. Marco checked the bathroom, dry. The floor is dry. Nothing. But the feeling that someone had just come out did not go away. Marco put the kettle on. The water made a noise. He leaned over to the tap and saw dark marks on the tile. 2 marks. Small. Like bare feet. The cold passed along the ridge. He took a towel and wiped them. That's it. Let's end it here. I won't look at nonsense anymore. But at night she appeared again. She stood next to me like a shadow. I didn't rustle. It didn't squeak. I was just pale, like chalk, with huge dark eyes. Marco couldn't move again. His body was as if someone was holding him. 5 seconds. 10. 20. The girl raised her hand and ran her fingers again. Follow me. Marco squeezed out a sound. What do you want? She didn't speak. The face remained frozen like a mask. She took a step back and disappeared, as if dissolved in the dark. This time, Marco didn't sleep. Until dawn, he sat in the kitchen with the lights on and wondered if he had gone crazy. On the 3rd night, everything changed. He woke up from crying. Quiet, barely audible. It was as if someone was sobbing quietly in the corner of the room. Marco slowly turned his head. She stood in the dark. And I cried. My hands were hanging down, my chin was shaking, and black stripes were flowing down my cheeks, like blackened mascara. And at the same time, the rope on her neck fell, as if something invisible was pulling her up. Wait, don't. Marco was scared, not understanding why he was saying this to the ghost. The girl stopped crying. I looked at him. And again she gestured, go. This time in the fingers was not just a gesture. It was an order. Marco couldn't stand it. Went to a psychologist. He didn't tell everything, only what he saw, the same girl in his dreams. The psychologist listened carefully, supported her chin with her hands and said, it's burnout. Stress. You need more rest. What about vision? They will disappear when you restore the regime. Marco left her with the feeling that he had not really been helped. But maybe it's really all from nerves. He went to bed early that night. And at the 3rd night I heard a rustle. I opened my eyes and the girl was just standing close. So close that he could see every pore on her pale skin. She didn't move. Just watching. She tilted her head. She raised her hand. And this time I didn't say, "Go." She pointed directly at the door. Marco felt something make him stand up. Not fear, but power. If he stayed lying down, he had the feeling that his legs would still rise by themselves. He stood up. She turned around and swam down the corridor. The shadow slid behind her as if she hadn't touched the floor. Marco followed. The corridor has become darker than it should have been. The light was flashing. The girl stopped at the front door. She poked her finger into the lock. Marco grew to the floor. He understood, she wanted him to come out. At night. Somewhere. He whispered, "No." The girl turned her head sharply. She pulled the rope that was hanging around her neck. And a black liquid began to flow from her eyes. She almost screamed silently, her mouth opened, but not a sound. However, Marco heard this scream in his head. He stumbled back abruptly and fell to the floor. I closed my eyes. When I got up, she wasn't there. The next 2 days were the hardest. He didn't sleep at all. I didn't even lie down. I drank coffee. I watched TV. Just sat. But every few hours in the mirrors he caught a shadow. In the bathroom, behind. In the microwave, when he bent over for pizza. In the glass body of the phone. The girl looked at him and waited. She always gestured. She didn't disappear even when he was awake. Marco began to understand, it's not a hallucination. This is something else. On the 4th night he gave up. It was exactly 3:03 when the shadow broke out at the bedroom door. The girl stood holding the rope that was falling from her neck. With every second, it seemed to become clearer, more authentic. Marco got out of bed. "Okay, drive," he whispered. She turned around. And this time, when he looked at her back, he noticed that the dress below was covered with dark spots. As if she was being dragged on the ground. Marco followed her to the front door. The girl did not touch the handle, the door opened by itself. It was dark in the entrance. No light, no sound, only the cold that grew with each step. She led him down the stairs. To the basement. Marco tried to stop. I couldn't. The legs moved by themselves. The basement stenched of dampness. Old doors, metal grills, dust. And somewhere far away, in the depths, there is darkness, which none of the residents has entered for years. The girl stopped in front of the old door, once painted blue, but now completely ripped. There was no key on the lock, only a staple. She pointed to the door. And then on the floor. Marco didn't understand. She tilted her head, and pieces of dust fell from the rope. She hit the floor with her palm. And then he heard a sound. Death. Like a bone. Under the concrete slab. Marco froze. He realized that there was something there. Not just something. Someone. The stove creaked a little. It seemed that someone was gently pushing her from below. Marco took a step back. The girl turned around abruptly. And her face twisted. The dark eyes became solid empty holes. A thick black liquid poured out of his mouth. She hissed silently, and Marco felt, if he doesn't open the stove, she will force him. Trembling, he took the edge of the concrete lid. She was heavy, but she gave in as if someone from below was helping. The smell hit sharply, rot, earth, something old. When the plate moved, Marco saw a hole about a meter deep. Everything was dark. But there is something white in the center. Bone. Skull. And also pieces of fabric. White dress. Marco snorted. The girl stood next to me, now very close. She looked at the hole and then at him. And then he realized, he didn't just find a place. He found what was left of her. She pointed to the bones. Then I put my hand on my throat. The rope tightened harder, and he heard a whisper, finally a sound, quiet, cracked, like the wind in an old pipe. Take me. Marco fell to his knees. What to do? How? She made a gesture. Remove. Bury. Find peace. Marco trembled like a leaf, but climbed into a hole. He grabbed the bones and put them in an old box that was lying next to it. Collected carefully, like something terribly important. When he got up, the girl was already standing without a rope. It seems to have become lighter. Calmer. He raised the box. Do you want me to? The girl nodded. And disappeared. Marco didn't know where to go. Went outside with a box. The night was quiet. The snow began to fall, the first of the season. He walked aimlessly until he reached the old park. There was an abandoned memorial cemetery, those whom no one took, who were not found. He stood in the center, on a clearing with 3 old trees. I put the box down. And in the same second I felt a presence nearby. She stood next to him. Without a rope. In a dress, no longer dirty, but clean. The eyes are not black, but light, almost transparent. She put her hand on his shoulder. Warm. Real. Marco burst into tears. I don't know who you are. But I heard you. She smiled. And she said the second time, and the last time, thank you. The wind rose, wrapped in a spiral. The snow swirled around her. And the girl melted in the air like smoke. Marco stood for a long time. Then I buried the box. And when he returned home, for the first time in many nights, he fell asleep. He never saw her again. No shadow. No rustle. No wet marks. Only sometimes, passing by the old park, he caught 3 trees in the middle of the clearing. And I thought that sometimes death could ask for help in silence. And only those who are ready to hear.